have such sights to show you.
We're Poppin the Scary Horror Podcast here. I'm your host, Coale, and with me, as always, I have my good friend and co-host, Aaron.
Hello.
Hello. Howdy, partner. What's happening, bubby?
Oh, you know, nothing much. Just got back from killing people out on the streets legally.
Man, sounds like you're celebrating the holiday, right? Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We're purging. It's the purge.
Yeah,
Purge-dergy.
I don't know. Do you know how much you know about the Purge at all?
This is another one of those. I feel like we have a few of these. This is another one of those that I know mostly through parody, you know. I've seen the trailer for the Purge because, you know, it wasn't that long ago that it came out. And I've seen people talk about it, but it's not like, what?
Well, you said it wasn't even that long ago. I think we're just getting to that point in life where everything's going fast.
I was alive when it was out, I guess is what I mean.
that was just like, it came out 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So as soon as you said it did come out that long ago, and I'm like, oh.
I was conscious in a movie going whenever it came out. We've been watching old movies mostly, but yes.
Yeah.
This was in the cultural consciousness while I was engaging in it, is what I meant.
Yes, that is, yes. I can't disagree with that. Yeah. This is definitely, like, growing up, you know, we went through the whole Purge experience. Not the actual Purge, mind you.
Well, some days, but...
Well, true.
You've never done a good bit of riding in the streets?
But yeah, I mean, aside from like hearing trailers, seeing stuff, everything like that, do you know anything about the Purge? I mean, obviously you know the rough.
Like, I know the concept, right? They like made crime illegal for a day to like make all the other days a little less crime free, so everybody saves it up for one or some stupid reason, and for some reason everybody just kills each other instead of like, you know, doing white collar crime, which is what I would do during the Purge, you know, just do some Ponzi schemes or something. I don't know, do some pump and dump. Just do some illegal stuff in the stock market. That's probably what most people would actually do during the Purge. But yeah, also killing people, and I guess probably drugs, and there's probably some rape. There's probably some good raping and pillaging, I imagine, in the Purge. But that's all I see talked about. Mostly, like, my longest Purge experience was probably that Rick and Morty episode that was the Purge. But that's, that's, again, it's all parody. I haven't seen any actual, like, movie pieces beyond the trailer for this movie. But.
Yeah. I think that's totally fair and accurate from what I heard. I was a little late to the Purge game. My wife loves the Purge series, like absolutely is obsessed with it. And so she was actually the one that kind of prompted me to go out and watch it. Because, you know, I had heard the same premise, like, you know, and it's one of those film ideas that I think, like, I'm trying to think of the best thing. It seems like a 4chan shitpost or Reddit shitpost, something like that. I think that's the best way, like, bruh, all I'm saying is that if they made crime legal for one day, it would drastically decrease.
It does sound like a copy pasta.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like it, exactly. And, you know, like, for as crazy enough an idea as it is, it does make for, like, an interesting idea for a movie, and we haven't even watched it. So, like, whenever I had heard it, I was just like, oh, okay. And then whenever I went to go watch it, you know, like I said, that's the only thing I went into seeing it with was just, okay, crimes illegal for a brief period of time there. And in fact, the actual Purge takes place March 21st, I think, of every year. So that's coming up.
Wow.
So you celebrated too early, bucko.
Whoops, got my calendar all mixed up.
Your Honor, I thought it was later than it was.
Honestly, St. Patrick's Day, the Purge, I don't know which one's which anymore.
Purge.
I thought I was just killing small people, but...
Okay, so I think we've definitely mentioned our grounds and
Yeah,
everything
the
there,
foundation.
expectations.
Yeah.
So we're going to be on lockdown for a little bit as we get ready for the good old purge. So we'll be right back.
Woohoo.
This is not a test. This is your emergency broadcast system announcing the commencement of the annual purge sanctioned by the U.S. government. Blessed be our new founding fathers and America, a nation reborn. May God be with you all.
And we have just survived the purge.
Whoa.
Whoa, I know, right, Bubby? I know. So, how do you think the event went?
Well, they said it was one of the most successful purges of all time.
Yes.
But well, how do you define success in a purge? How would
Money.
you? Money?
Money and
How do you
lots
make,
of kills.
How do you make money in a purge?
I mean, you're the white collar man. You tell me.
That's true.
Or unless you're keeping your secrets close to your chest, you know.
I guess
Don't-
I guess you could just do a lot of armed robbery. That probably just involves murder.
It's just like in Grand Theft Auto, you know, you go around
Yeah.
and see how long you get before the cops get you. Without the cops,
Yeah.
that's just free real estate.
Dude, just spend one purge purchasing illegal explosives, and then the next purge using them to break into bank vaults. That's an investment right there.
I like the way you think. Speaking of success, without talking about the film itself, the film was an immense success. Running off a budget of $3 million, it made barely under $90 million.
That's a profit right there.
Yeah, that's a pretty big profit there. And with that said in mind, do you think the film was worth the profit it made?
I think it was probably mostly people going to see an original idea and not necessarily the quality of the film. But it's a cool idea.
Yes.
It's something that they had not done in film before, and somebody darn did it in a film, and boy did they do it.
I couldn't agree more with that exact same line of thought there, because I think like it was mostly the idea that drew people in, and I think because they were able to make it relatively cheap there. I mean, I know 3 million isn't like super cheap, but by today's standards and even 10 years ago standards,
Right.
it's still a smaller amount there. So I mean, that's basically how the whole slasher genre was even started, just low budget, you know, high profits sort of thing there. But
Oh, yeah.
I think you're definitely on point about the fact that I think one of the strongest things about this film is the whole idea of the purge. It's that whole idea that I think gives this film ground to stand on. And while the other elements of the film definitely lack, I feel like the idea within itself is just entertaining enough, and probably is more the reason why they've been able to make so many friggin' sequels with this series.
True. I also do think they do a pretty good job covering a lot of the questions one might ask with, you know, okay, how would a purge really affect the nation, affect these people, yada yada. So they do explore a decent amount of content. There is just so much left to as we were just talking about. How do you make money? What happens during the next day of the purge? Do you just walk outside and you're like, howdy ho, neighbors? You know, how you doing? Oh, sorry, we all tried to kill each other yesterday. Teehee. Let's pretend to be nice for 364 more days. Like, is that really how it goes now?
Yeah, you just had to watch the sequels, man.
I guess.
Maybe. I haven't even watched all of them yet.
Yeah.
I've only watched a few more.
Man, how many they made?
A lot, I
Okay.
think. I think they even made a prequel or something like
prequel?
that. I think so.
How they came, like the first purge?
Yes, exactly. Maybe. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, there's only 5 of them, but I know there's like a Purge TV series, I believe, for a little bit. So, yeah, not too many there, but oh yeah, see, the first Purge,
The first purge.
which I have not seen yet.
forever
So, to be continued,
Purge Save
perhaps,
America.
maybe. Anyhow, let's talk about the plot of the film, which I feel like for a plot, it's pretty grounded, pretty based there.
Yes.
But basically, it focuses on the Sandin family, which they're like, richer upper class family, where basically it's the night of the purge there, and they're getting ready to lock themselves in with especially their new security system that the dude invented, made millions selling it there. And as they lock down, their youngest son, Charlie, happens to find somebody wandering the streets crying out for help. And whenever he decides to invite him in, loads of problems start popping up related to the person he helps and not related to the person he helps there.
True.
So it definitely comes collapsing in on the Sandin household. But I mean, I feel like just focusing on like right before the purge starts and spoiler alerts following the end of the purge, I feel like it's a very straightforward plot line for an idea.
It is, and I also do think it is a pretty cheap to produce way to produce the purge, because I kind of was expecting going in that we would be seeing people in the streets running for their lives kind of deal. That's not really what this Purge movie was about. It was just inside of a house for like 95% of it, which made sense with this plot line because it's a family just trying to stay safe during the Purge, but not really looting, shooting, rooting, and tooting,
Yeah, I feel like overall it's I have zero problems with the plot. Maybe with some of the flourishes they add, but the base structure of the plot is pretty straightforward, and I feel like it's, I mean, especially if you're going to make a long-running series, a good way to start the whole series off. So I feel like I don't really have any qualms with the plot, nor do I have anything great to say about the plot. It's just like, yep, it runs perfectly with the whole ideology and theme of the film.
Right. I guess my only issue would be that you don't really get to go anywhere. You kind of get stuck in this house, you know what I mean? For the entire movie, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I think that's a challenging thing, and it's not really a challenge they overcame. I did feel a little trapped in that house for that entire movie. But yeah, no. As far as a plot goes, I think it was a fine foundation. How they wrote upon that plot, well, that's a different story. But
yeah, and we could definitely kind of discuss a lot more of it after we talk about the characters real quick, which fortunately shouldn't be too terribly long, because that's one thing I kind of like. There's only like a few characters that they do spend a lot of time for you to try to get to know, as opposed to haphazardly in sort of a half-assed way, just like try to do a multitude of characters.
Sure.
So focusing on the head of the Sandin household, we have James Sandin, played by Ethan Hawke.
Ethan Hawke.
He is definitely rich American white dad. Yeah, to a T there. He's a family man, but also believes in the purge and the foundations of America. Very, very rich white dad.
Patriotic upper class status quo holder.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And I mean, I feel like Ethan Hawke plays it exactly as how it is in the script, so I don't even feel like it's a fault of the actor. I feel like he just goes in and just, checks all the boxes there. I don't think he has like any over the top, like groundbreaking performances. He's just helping keep the plot chugging along.
He is the patriarch of the family. Yeah, his motivations are pretty straightforward. All of his lines are pretty straightforward. I mean, a lot of the stuff in this movie is a little cringeworthy because it's just really white,
You're not wrong.
He's like, hey, champ, that was school.
Yeah, exactly.
Guy. Your left hand on the piano wavers a little bit during the third act, whatever he said.
And I feel like for what Ethan Hawke is given, he does it well. Yeah. He does it well, but you're right. It's just very, very, very much that stereotype there. Doesn't, and again, you buy it, you believe it, and it just helps keep everything flowing along there. Next we have Lena Headey. There. It's always funny because every film I see her in, our TV series, she always has a different hairstyle. It always seems to be the case. Like, it's always something different.
A little bit, yeah.
That's a random observation I made, but same thing as Ethan Hawke. I feel like she's given just the mother of the family who's just trying to do her best to try to be nurturing towards her kids, be a faithful spouse, and everything. Just again, I don't feel like this is anything about Lena at all whatsoever, because obviously she's a fantastic actress, absolutely amazing, especially in Game of Thrones, which is a very hard role.
True.
But besides that, she just plays it straightforward also, but I feel like that's just what the plot requires, doesn't ask for any backflips or anything like that.
I always find it funny when I'm watching Lena Headey on screen because she's like, she acts so much with her expressions,
Yes.
She has like such like defined facial expression. So seeing her as like a worried mom, she's just constantly like eyebrows and oh.
Yeah, definitely is very much acting with all the muscles in her face there. I mean, not like Jim Carrey level of stretching there, but definitely, yeah, you're definitely right. She was having a workout on her face there. And then we get to the youngest kiddo, Charlie, played by Max Burkholder.
He's holding those Bergs.
Yeah, and again, he's just the quirky little boy in the family there, but also serves to be kind of like the one to challenge the ideals his parents believe in.
Right, he's like, yeah, this Purge stuff's kind of fucked up. And they're like, Charlie, no. This is American.
And I feel like it was necessary to have a character like that to kind of challenge the ideals that his parents believed in. And they don't give him a lot personality wise there. He's just kind of a nerd a little bit, because he has his booklet where he's writing down his blood pressure, what it's at every day and hour and whatnot. And then of course you made this joke whenever they introduced like the low running cam. It was like, is that a baby with an iPhone attached to its head? And I'm like, you're not far off.
It was kind of a baby with a camera in it, yeah.
And so I just feel like, he's another character that kind of helps add a little flourish to the narrative there, just because of his skills and everything. So, I mean, I feel like overall that was definitely a sort of nice welcome there, I would say, at the least. So, again, no complaints. I feel like he took the script and just ran with it exactly as it needed to.
Yeah.
Last member of the Sandin family is Zoe, played by Adelaide Kane, I believe that's how you pronounce it.
That's how I would pronounce it.
Yeah, and so I feel like overall, definitely kind of, again, filling the role of the older daughter, sister role there, where basically she's like very much whatever.
The horror movie staple of the sexualized minor. You gotta have that in every horror movie.
And I feel like, again, she does pretty well. I would definitely say maybe between all the family members, she gets the least amount of characterization. Like they tried to do a little bit of something.
Beginning a little bit with like her boyfriend shenanigans,
but then it drops off.
Oh yeah, she just kind of poofs after that.
Yeah, which again, it's nothing like bad on her part there. It's just like, again, I think whenever you're trying to tell a straightforward script, somebody's going to get screwed out of the development department.
Yeah.
So I definitely think her having that extra development at the beginning was very much needed to feel like you have a grounded, somewhat character to help continue on with the story there. So, I mean, overall, I felt like that was perfectly fine. And then, of course, we get to the one individual that Charlie decides to save, who is only known as the Bloody Stranger.
Bloody Stranger.
Yes, played by Edwin Hodge. And I feel like he's given not a lot, but he tries to make the most out of it to the nth degree there. Because really, like, everything you see him do or say is very minimal. Very, very minimal there.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to kind of just fill in the pieces yourself, like looking at him, his demeanor, the way he talks and everything. And you just kind of fill in your blanks about who he was. And again, you only get like vague descriptions of, other stuff. So it's really hard. And I think Edwin Hodge really did a good job there, I think. But again, it's also like in the script department, I don't think they wrote too much.
Right. He's just his motivation's pretty straightforward. He's just trying to survive, and he's sort of used as more of a plot device than anything, more of a character. But...
Yeah, that's kind of like the interesting thing, because I feel like with the idea of the Purge, they were thinking about who would be the strong figures that would be represented in the Purge there. And it's like you have Ethan Hawke's character, who again is the upper class person who believes in the ideals. Then you have Edwin, who most certainly does not believe in the ideals, because again, as you come to find out, he is not fortunate like the Sandin family is whenever it comes to financial income.
Yes.
At all whatsoever.
He is a homeless man.
Yes, and there's definitely a lot we could talk more about him, I think. I'm trying to keep it somewhat spoiler free. It's kind of hard setting up the pieces, but I would say like once the Purge starts, that's whenever it starts getting kind of to spoilers territory.
True.
But I feel like, and again, we'll keep this as light as we can, I think the most memorable character in the entire film, and I think even the studio knew this because I remember seeing him in the trailers, was Rhys Wakefield, who you never know the name of. He's just called Polite Leader. And let me tell you something. I think that dude was able just to easily steal the audition with just his smile alone.
Yeah, he got a face with a Joker smile built in.
Yeah, absolutely. And in all honesty, I mean, he was probably my favorite character to watch in the film, because I'm just like, what is this dude going to do or say next there? And like, I'd be lying if I said like, oh, is this like one of the best, performances I've seen in any like horror film or film entirely? No.
Yeah.
But it's still pretty good. I mean, they knew what they were doing casting him, and he knew what he wanted to do with the role there. I mean, because I don't know, do you remember seeing him in the trailers and stuff, just like him staring up at the camera?
At the camera? Yeah.
I definitely think, he was definitely going to be one of the draws to this film, and he really is. Like, this is my second time seeing him, and I enjoy him as much the second time as I did the first time there. How they develop his character and everything towards the end, we'll talk a little bit about that there, but overall, I mean, I thought Rhys hit it out of the park with this role there. Just, I think he was the one to really spring it to life. But again, I think he has the privilege of just being more insane, so he sticks out a lot more, as opposed to like, the Sandin family or the Blaze Stranger, where they have to be a lot more grounded. Whereas during the Purge, there's a lot of people cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs running around.
True, they've been building this up all year, and they finally get to let it all out, like a kid on Christmas.
Yes, but, I mean, aside from that, the only other character I could think of that has some little relevance there is Zoe's boyfriend, Henry.
True.
Which, again, helps question mark with the development there, dialogue to be questioned.
Yeah, I'll have things to say about that guy when we get to spoiler territory.
But overall, he's there, and there are other characters in the story, but I think overall I don't know, maybe you have a different opinion, but there's just really nothing much, and I feel like we just be going down like, yep, that's a character. Yep, that's a character.
No, I agree. Yeah, there are kind of like clusters of characters you could talk about. Like all the neighbors kind of form into one character, really. And, the polite leader who he's leading is kind of all just one entity, But, I don't think it's worth diving into any of that. But
yeah, so I would say overall the 6 characters we talked about, minus Henry, in all honesty, there are kind of the more standout roles. True. I would argue, in the Purge there. So overall, I think like whenever it comes to cast of characters as a whole, they do the job. They go in. There wasn't anything like abhorrently bad with the main 6 per se there. Definitely some cheesy lines, both intentional and unintentional, most certainly unintentional there. But yeah, and if we dig through the rest of the film there, I feel like the film is very nicely edited there for the most part.
Yeah, sure,
Like
yeah.
I like that, you know, they really play up with the security footage camera of just doing like kind of very eerie sort of imagery there and everything else like that. I do like how with the baby cam footage there, there is a visible downgrade without doing like the stupid, you know, we're actually recording. This is how much battery, like the
Right.
fake overlay stuff you see all the time.
Mhm.
I like how that's done there. Um, I do like that the film is set in the magical year of 2022.
Right. They did not have the foresight of the gift of future knowledge to know
Yeah,
what
it's always
2022 would actually look like.
yeah, it's always interesting. Although I will say their 2022 is closer than Blade Runner's 2019.
That's fair.
Yeah.
They weren't casting as far into the future though. But...
Yes, true. Only like 9 years into the future there. I mean, it's hard to kind of talk about the film without talking about like more spoiler stuff, but I feel like whenever it comes to like the special effects, there is some practical effects and then some CGI effects. I feel like overall practical is always looks good for the most part in more modern day, and CGI there's definitely some shots that I'm like, okay, I could see like the green highlight around the special effects they threw onto there. But I will ask, whenever it comes to the antagonist, like I don't know, there's probably a term in the Purge that they would call it, but the Purgers, you know, like led by the polite leader, how did you feel of them being like a horror antagonist there? Because that's the one thing I want to talk about, is the fact that I don't know if you've noticed this during like Halloween events, you'll see some people with like what I call the Purge mask there and everything, so it's left like an impact for sure. How do you think the Purgers stand as an antagonist in this film?
Well, I'll go ahead and put a little footnote here for spoiler territory, and just saying that, and I'll elaborate on this later. But just saying, I think this movie has an antagonist problem, with like who is the antagonist when. But we don't have to talk about that now. The Purgers, led by the polite leader, I thought stylistically like they were fine. The one thing I did think was interesting is actually most of them were wearing masks that like just kind of look like caricatures of themselves or caricatures of rich white people. But like they were rich white people. They were dressed up in preppy suits and stuff, and they were talking about all this classist bullshit of like, yeah, we gotta kill homeless people. And so like their motivation was, yeah, essentially classist and racist, but they were wearing masks that usually you'd wear a mask of, you know, something to hide your identity. But even in the beginning, the polite leader pulls off a mask that looks like exactly like his actual face. And so it's kind of, I did think that was funny. But yeah, a lot of the stuff where it's like the white dress covered in blood with the machete or whatever, I feel like at this point in horror movie things, it was a little derivative, a little unoriginal, but I did think like the polite leaders get up of just like people in preppy outfits like shooting and stabbing people was a little more scary, because it was a little more like, I don't know, original and realistic, because like these kids are like, we're rich and we have a right to kill people or whatever. It's like not as far off from reality as like, I'm gonna be in a Halloween costume and kill somebody. But I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's definitely interesting, because I do feel like, you know, now whether how high they are on the horror tier of being iconic, I do think they do succeed in being like somewhat iconic there, because again, like even though it is just like them and just like nice clothing and with masks that kind of don't really make them look like characters or anything, because trust me, I'm sure you've seen loads of like other movie posters for the Purge films, they definitely change up the mask variety there. But I feel like for the first film, it's simplistic, but it works there. Like, you just see like the very characterized masks that are very close to the face almost. I mean, I feel like the polite leader there could easily match the smile of his mask there, just with how cartoonishly high it is and everything. And, their mannerisms of them just either just, acting like violent children in every aspect there definitely makes them stand out. And I do think it does hit a little close to home because, again, it's one of those things that it does get closer to life, but also manages to fantasize it a little bit there.
Oh, yeah.
Just to make them seem kind of more, it's not even like there's an individual killer like Jason. It's more like an entity.
Right.
There, just based on the idea. And I do think that is a very clever idea to make a whole film about. So, even though my score may not reflect this per se, I feel like the idea of the film is arguably the best thing about this film as a whole.
I would agree with that. Yeah. I think it's a concept film that, they might not have executed great on the first time because they're just trying to make a movie with $3.3 million, and most of that probably went to Ethan Hawke and Lena Headey. So, what were you left with? But yeah, I definitely have things in this film that seemed to detract from, my overall enjoyment and experience of it. But overall, that's what drove things to the theater, were ideas. Ideas are important, people. So
take notes, y'all.
Yeah.
Take notes. Aside from that, buddy, anything else you want to talk about before diving into spoilers?
I don't know. Like, there are things I could talk about. I really honestly think a lot of the sound design and kind of jump scares and things they were going for were all pretty derivative of other horror movies I've seen. I feel like I've heard that like they were just pulling like horror movie soundtrack samples to do every like creepy violin when the guy shows up, and it's like I felt like I for such an original idea and concept, I was kind of disappointed by the lack of originality in some of the other areas of this film. So, I mean, with that said, I could run through the list of other stuff, but I just don't think there's a whole lot that's unique and talkable about this movie besides the actual Purge concept. But.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right, and even though I did mention I did like the editing of cinematography, I think there's definitely a lot of moments that are not good. Not good. I think just more visually, I guess that's where I was leaning more towards on editing there. Because sound department wise, it's just pretty there. And then the jump scares, you are most certainly correct. I never felt like there was just one original thing they did there.
They overused them a lot. They did the thing that is kind of a marker of poor quality horror movies for me, where it's before the horror even starts, they feel like they gotta scare you, so it's oops, the daughter was around the corner. Oops, the son scares the mom, he was behind the fridge, and it's shut the fuck, that's not, it's not only cheap, it's not effective, and it's just kind of dampens those sorts of jump scares, and just, I felt like they didn't do a great job of building realistic tension throughout the movie, and I can explain sort of why and give examples and spoilers, but I didn't feel like, for as scary as a concept as it could be, that it was actually that spooky.
I think that's definitely totally fair to mention there. So, aside from that, man, I guess we might as well talk about our ratings. How about it?
Yeah.
Okay, Aaron, I will let you be the first.
I'll give it 1 growl out of 10. That was a reference to the boyfriend in the beginning when they growled at each other. No,
I thought you were doing a Nixon impersonation.
No, they growled at each other instead of saying "I love you."
I'm sorry, Henry. That was some of the worst growling I had ever heard.
It was bad growling. It was a bad idea. It's not the only bad idea Henry had that night.
Oh my God.
Let me tell you. Wow, yeah, I mean, my rating is also propped up by the idea, and then it doesn't do much to glide beyond that. yeah, we can dig into some of the issues I had that really were little thorns in my side. Overall, it was an entertaining movie. It is a movie that I feel like, if you want to watch the movie for the concept, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just don't expect much beyond the concept. And so for that, I give it a solid 4 out of 10. This is a 4 out of 10 film. It was enjoyable. It was kind of mindless. And there's just not a lot of depth to it. But, you don't always need depth in your film. You could just watch some people in a rich household shoot some other people. That's all you want. That's fine, but that only boosts it to a 4 for me.
I think that's totally fair and understandable there. Totally fair and understandable. Going in, I remembered a lot of the stuff because I knew like the twist and everything. It had been a while since I had seen the film, so I was like, like whenever it came to rewatching the film, I noticed that the parts that I did like definitely felt more brief, and the parts that I felt uncertain about, I wasn't quite as big of a fan of the second time round there, where I'm like, okay. One thing I will mention that is a huge bonus is that the film flies by pretty quickly. Like it definitely could have been way longer, because there's been some films where I feel like I've been there for like 3 hours and it's only an hour and a half film. So while it does linger a bit, it does keep up the pace there. But yeah, overall, I would definitely say this is a little bit of a lower score than what I'd get the first time round, because again, the idea, I was just like, wow, this is a really nifty idea. I like a ton. I'd probably rate it a 5 out of 10 in all honesty there. I just feel like, again, if it wasn't for how original and cool the idea was to base a whole film around, it would definitely bring it down. Like if it was just like some regular home invasion film and it didn't talk about the whole political charge that's underneath there and just talking about like this ideal. Because they do dive into that, because like that's one of my favorite things as a polite reader is talking. He's like, this is our American rights to do this.
Yeah.
And I feel like just having that extra, political charge behind their words they speak and their motivation does elevate the film for me, because you definitely believe that these people are truly feeling like, this is what it's like to be a patriot, this is our rights and everything. And I feel like it does elevate it to a bit of a high art level. Now, it's still a 5 out of 10, so the high is definitely not the highest art can go in film there, but I think it's a pretty good average watch. I mean, I could see why, especially with our generation, growing up, this is like a film who's like, oh yeah, you want to go check out this film, it's going to be crazy. People going crazy, being able to commit whatever crimes they want. And this is a small thing, I do like how they do mention what is legal and what isn't legal there. I thought that was like a nifty charge that, they didn't have to do, but they did have the decency to be like, you can't kill like these important leaders that are ranked this high. You can't use weapons that go above this level. But other than that, have at it. So I'm definitely very curious to see about spoilers and what we're able to discuss there. So if for some reason you haven't seen The Purge or anything like that, and don't want to get spoiled, definitely bow out here. But other than that, Aaron and I are going to chug right along as we talk about the first spoiler here.
First spoiler.
Yeah.
First spoiler alert. 7 p.m. We're going to purge the first spoiler.
This is the first spoiler.
No Class C spoilers can be
All right, let's talk about it, man.
Yeah. Hey, well, let's start with the first spoiler chronologically that I would like to talk about, and that's Henry. I want to talk about Henry's motivations, Henry's quick demise, how they set up a conflict with him and just immediately scrubbed it. At the same time that they were introducing another conflict for an inexplicable reason. Henry. Wow. I will say it was both a good and a bad decision to kill that guy really early, because he was really cringe.
You're not wrong. You're definitely not wrong about the cringe.
I just like, okay, like the cringe setup in the beginning where they're growling at each other, and then he's like, baby, it doesn't matter that I'm 35 and you're 12. Talk to your dad about it or whatever. He wasn't probably that. They looked like the same age, but I don't know, man. According to the script, he was much older. And yeah, he had to go talk to his dad about it. He was a good character in the fact that he was a creepy guy and he snuck into the house, obviously to kill the dad. This is going to be a running theme with my criticisms. It's pretty obvious to see where the plot's going, and most of the time I was like, yeah, you think he snuck into his house during the Purge to talk to him? Like, oh, the doors are locked, now we can chat. Like, it's going to try to kill the dad. I didn't think it was going to be that quickly, though. He's just like, Mr. Sandin, yeah, gun.
Yeah.
I guess my biggest spoiler is like the fact that he goes to kill the dad at the same time that the homeless guy brings in really just sunk the tension out of both of those plot points. And then the dad just shoots and kills him immediately. And it was like, wow, the Purge has been happening for like 10 minutes. And already I thought there was going to be two like conflicts here. Like there's two bad guys. Okay. The mysterious man in the house that the son let in, and then evil boyfriend that wants to kill the dad. But no, he shoots and kills the boyfriend immediately, so that conflict is just like whiffed. I was like, okay, maybe he's crawling around and he's bloody, but the dad goes and finds him immediately. He's like, wow, he's dead. So that just poofed any tension out of that situation. I don't know. What did you think about Henry and his very short-lived plot?
Massive cringe for sure there, but I do think it is like a nifty idea how they did spin it into him being sort of an antagonist there. Because I do believe this is something, not mentally well boyfriend would do. Like, it's like, oh, if the dad doesn't approve of me, if I kill him, then that'll make it okay.
Then I can be with his daughter.
Yes, despite the fact that it's a terrible idea, I could see somebody believing in that for sure.
And that's why I was like, cool, this makes sense, this is going somewhere. And then it went nowhere.
Yes, but I didn't even think about the fact that, introducing, the bloody stranger into the house at the same point that the boyfriend decides to try to take pot shots at Ethan Hawke. I definitely felt like it could have been just edited so much better. Like, at least maybe have the bloody stranger come in first there. But I think they did want to introduce that somehow the boyfriend was able to sneak in before they closed it down there. But I think it would definitely be sort of an interesting cat and mouse thing, because having the bloody stranger, which nobody knows anything about, which I do like, while I did kind of like, lament about there not being a lot on the script for the bloody stranger, I feel like him being shrouded in mystery kind of leaves it up as, okay, is this dude actually going to turn out to be evil or crazy, or is he just going to kill everybody in a will to survive there? Like, what is he going to do? Having that and the boyfriend who wants to kill the dad, like, trapped inside their house roaming around. Meanwhile, you have the polite stranger banging on the door being like, hey, we want to kill the homeless dude. Bring him out. Otherwise, we're going to mess things up for you. Like, having 3 points of contention would have definitely been a really crazy idea. The only reason as to why I can surmise they didn't do it is the fact that they wanted to spend time on other stuff there, which I can understand, but I think definitely surprisingly, there wasn't too much tension I felt the first time watching the film. Maybe just a little bit, but then, especially the second time around watching it, the tension I had felt previously was a little bit alleviated more so. So I'm just like, okay, and we're walking around the house. That dude's coming right there. And I just didn't feel that same adrenaline as I do with other horror films I watch repeatedly there.
Right. I felt like they could have done the same idea and just executed it better, where, the bloody stranger is there. It's really tense. Ethan Hawke's got the gun on him, and they're yelling at the son back and forth. Why'd you let him in? They're trying to figure out, is this guy good or bad? And the guy's just stuck there. And then, linger on that a bit so that it feels tense. And right when you think something's going to happen, then the boyfriend is like, Mr. Sandan, or whatever.
Yes.
And then it's like, oh, fuck. And then that's what lets the bloody stranger get away or whatever. Like, they were setting up. And then and then kind of string along. And you also needed to set up the boyfriend a little bit more, because it was just like, they had a scene before the Purge, and so obviously there's no, like, real conflict there. They're just introducing him. And then they had a scene right as the Purge began where he's in the room and they're making out. And then he's like, I'm going to go talk to your dad. And he's like, he didn't let it, like, linger enough. Like, if he was, like, sneaking around the house and just, like, the daughter was getting more suspicious of, like, why are you? Or, you know, like, yeah, like, if there's just, you just let that tension build. But I feel like they shook up the bottle and then they instantly took off the cap. You know what I mean? You got to let it fizzle, you know?
Yeah.
So I just feel like they probably did it in the interest of time, or, you know, whatever. But it just, the end result was that neither of those plot lines were super as tense as they could be. They gave more time to the bloody stranger later, obviously, but the boyfriend, I feel like, was just completely dudded out for me.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like I understand why they did it, but also because they snuffed out that plot line so quickly, it just kind of makes it seem a little bit pointless. Even, like, because what could have also been compelling is if the boyfriend got a shot off on Ethan Hawke, and so then he's crippled, and so at least there's a, you know, a lead up, because really, what was the only lead up to the boyfriend dying there?
Right.
You know, just shocking, I guess. I don't know.
It caused, I guess, like, their point was that it, like, gave a reason for the daughter to just be hysteric and running around and not be with the family the whole time. But even that didn't leave any tension, because like, the third time she ran off, I was like, whatever, die then. Like, it's like, why are you not sticking with the family? They were just, like, splitting up, like, all right, gang, let's split up as much as possible for no reason. But
Yeah, I think you're definitely correct with that there. And it's so funny because, again, you just never really build any sort of, like, there's not a whole lot of character development. I mean, really, the only character development that happens is probably with Ethan Hawke's character, because he's such a firm believer in the Purge. But then after he confronts the bloody stranger, you know, they get into a fight, and then, you know, they're duct taping him to a chair, having Lena stab him with the letter opener to try to calm, like, to have him stop resisting there. So they tape him to a chair. And again, he only changes his mind after he sees, like, how distraught his daughter is about it as well. He's the only one, and he's just like, oh no, we'll defend him. And it's funny because I had thought about this initially, but I was like, did they just forget they typed him up to the chair? But on the other hand, I'm wondering if, again, the filmmakers just want us to fill in the blanks, that we would maybe assume he would want to keep the bloody stranger taped up to a chair, because he's like, I'll let you live. I don't know who you are, though, or what you're going to do, so it's just safer to keep you taped up.
Right. And also maybe a thought in the back of his head, well, maybe they'll kick down the door and see him taped up in the living room and not kill my family.
Yeah, that's fair. Just like having a trade-off there and everything. But, you know, there's really not a whole lot of, you know, big arcs for the characters to make them feel like, you know, they're such deep characters. Because, again, even with the bloody stranger, there's only, like, a few hints of maybe you can guess what he was. Because, like, there's one scene where you see his dog tags hanging out. So you can assume, like, okay, he served in the military. And, you know, there's a lot of sad stories where people served in the military, and then as soon as they get back, they're so messed up they can't really hold down a job or anything like that, and end up being homeless there. But, again, they don't talk about the bloody stranger's past or anything there. You know, it's one of those things that he's just a good guy.
Yeah.
That doesn't want to die.
And that's kind of why I said in the non-spoiler territory that he's more of a plot device than a character. He sort of represents the humanization of what everybody else in the Purge is trying to dehumanize, which is like, poor people just need to die. Like, stop being poor. I don't know what to tell you. And so he's sort of like the face behind, okay, because they're all comfortable living in their little security systems and being like, well, the Purge just happens and it's everything's good now because of the Purge. And he's the face of like, no, everything's not good, you know?
Yes, for sure. And, you know, I feel like it is a strong, like, political message there, because I do think that is, like, something that, you know, especially if you're upper class, higher class, you overlook the problems like poverty. And that was one of my favorite things, kind of all the TV footage of people talking about the Purge. I thought that was one of the more interesting aspects of people talking about, like, they say the Purge is something they do solely because of money. However, a lot of people believe that killing the homeless helps eliminate poverty in that way, and everyone's just having like their scientific political talks about the Purge, which again, I think that's the reason why the filmmakers, just had the most fun, is just talking about the idea of the Purge.
I will say, I get like a little sensitive about like how news is portrayed in popular culture or whatever. I actually liked how they did the news in this one. It was pretty fucking, I guess it would be accurate if the Purge actually happened. Here's what the news would look like, because they would love to talk about all the Purge shit that's happening, but then also it's actually balanced, because we had one or two people on that were like, well, actually, purging is just killing homeless people. but like no like actual footage of like homeless people dying on the streets or anything. Like I don't know. I was comfortable with how they portrayed news coverage, because it's just sort of like maintaining the status quo. I would have been upset if there were like reporters out in the street being like, "Sir, are you purging tonight?" Like, because of course they're gonna not be out there. Like you could have done it so wrong, and I feel like people do it so wrong so often, but they really didn't. Like, the news just started up again, like, after all the Purge happened. They weren't keeping the news channels on. They was like, whoa, look at all this Purge, because, like, what fucking dude is gonna be out there with a camera, like, oh, all these people purging in Dallas tonight? Like, they were just talking about I don't know, that's a weird little detail, but I do feel like that they did the media portrayal fine.
Yeah, I think that was definitely, it's so funny to think about that maybe they had more fun doing that as opposed to actually talking about the story there, because even with the radio shows at the beginning, it's like, oh, hey, what do you plan on doing for the Purge tonight? I'm gonna kill my boss. Whoa!
Hey, happy purging to you.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, I definitely thought it was like, a parody almost of like what news coverage would be, but it was like one that was, what parody's supposed to be, to poke fun and be accurate of, this is probably how they would handle this situation.
Yeah. And so I think that's a good solid bullet point there, just to kind of mention. It's just like how they portray the news in this film. I again, kind of talking about the whole beliefs about the whole event of the Purge. That's one thing that I find the polite leader so interesting about, is the fact that he doesn't immediately be like, hey, I know you have this homeless dude, let me tear it down. He comes at it in a civil manner for quite a little bit of time. You can definitely tell he's unhinged, but he's walking up, he's like, hey, I was talking to the neighbors and they said you brought that dude in, and gotta be honest, we were hunting him down. I mean, it's our American right. Plus, he killed one of our dudes. So, we're like of the same, pedigree.
Right.
There. Just bring him out and we'll just, exercise our right as American citizens, And it's like, for the world they live in, it makes sense. Like, he's speaking with logical basis stuff. I mean, yes, he's trying to kill somebody, but if you think about it, it is legal. It's not right, but it is legal there. And I really like that. I also like that whenever he's like calling the second time, he's like, hey, can we just meet up in person, talk, like, because they were talking over the camera first, through camera footage, and then they talk through like the little like window slit that's at the front bolted like metal door they have. And he's like talking, he's like, hey, I know you haven't brought him out yet. You might want to bring him out before the boys and I come over and we just kind of mess things up for you. And then even seeing like the one lackey behind him just get super violent and primal and everything talking. And then the polite leader just without a second guess just blowing his brains out there. And he's like, yeah, that was my friend. And if I'm willing to do that for him, I can't imagine what I'm willing to do to somebody I don't even know. There, I just really love that, and that was like another parts of my favorite films is like that stuff, which makes me, I don't know. I guess sad. I guess sad's the right word. That he doesn't get as much screen time as you would think with being played up, on it. But I do like it. And even whenever he is finally like, okay, welp, fine, I'm just going to have to kill you and your entire family since you're not willing to let us purge.
Right.
Because you could definitely tell he is deep in the weeds of the purge philosophy.
He's purged up, dude. He's he really represents that sort of like rich alt-right, he's kind of a Nazi. Like, let's just put
yes, absolutely. Even having college attire there with like the patch logo there.
He looks like he's on a swim team, and he probably like raped some people and then got off of it because he's, he wouldn't want to ruin this man's bright future. So,
but I do find him endearing as a character. Again, a little goofy for sure, definitely for sure there. But whenever they do break in to terrorize a family after they decide they're going to defend this bloody stranger. I do like how they do it in a realistic manner that, okay, we'll just hide in a house and pray we could take them off one by one because there's a lot of them swarming in. And I feel like for the most part, whenever they were swarming in, there's like a couple of like good scares, but then other than that, I surprisingly didn't feel too much of anything else with the other purgers. Like some of them would act a little goofy, like there's like the couple where he has like his what I assume to be girlfriend on his back as they're just like waltzing through the house, but for the most part it's just kind of masked individuals just kind of running in.
I feel like it really did describe like these are some kids, some privileged kids that get to do the hunting, and they're going out and they're looking forward. They're having a fun night on the town. This is Halloween for them, you know what I mean? And then he comes waltzing in the room, and Ethan Hawke's there with the shotgun, and he goes, "Oh fuck!" And like
they immediately disperse.
Yeah, but like it goes from like being a fun like peekaboo, I'm gonna get you moment to being like, oh shit, right, people die.
Yes,
and then they're fighting for their life.
Yeah, and I feel like overall the the scenes where they fight with each other, overall I feel like are just fairly okay. They're not the best, they're not the worst I've ever seen there. And you would think it would be like super over the top because again, like Ethan Hawke smashes somebody's head to decide with like a cue ball, something like that from the pool table, or slams the other dude's head on the pinball. But I mean, I feel like overall, whenever it came to the kills, they weren't like super memorable. Like all I remembered about the kills is that, oh yeah, they're like in a game room or something like that. But aside from that, it was just okay. And maybe it's just because I've been very spoiled in the slasher genre where you have to creatively come up with these insane ideas.
Well, but no, I think you're right. There's so much of the like jump scare kind of stuff, or not even jump scare, but like surprise kind of stuff was just someone else being around the corner with a gun and then someone gets shot and dead. Like, it became so tiresome at one point that by the time they were like all tied up as a family and all the neighbors were out there, like I was just calling it. I was like, all right, the homeless guy's gonna come with a gun and kill them all now. And then he did that. There's like every kill, like Ethan Hawke turns a corner and then the polite stranger's there and stabs him or whatever. Like I would have loved to seen like a fight between them, especially between someone who claims to love the Purge so much. Wouldn't you love the violence aspect of it? Wouldn't you want to like savor in it? And he has moments of that where he's trying to like savor it, but then whenever it comes to actual, like I would love for him to have like a baseball bat and him and Ethan Hawke just like fight it out or whatever.
If that, at least give it to somebody else.
Right.
Give us that big ultimate fight, because I think the interesting thing about the polite leader is basically whenever you see him walk through the house, he's not like bashing up the walls or goofing around or anything. He's just analyzing, bringing everything in, and just like looking at this family that he's about to wipe out. Right. I think he just enjoys knowing that he's able to like take life from somebody. I think that's his thing, because even the way he he doesn't kill, the way he stabs Ethan Hawke, first of all, it's goofy as hell. Yeah. Just the fact that, he just rounds a corner perfectly, stabbing his machete through there. And again, you see like him going, shh, doing that there. And he's just like, how does it feel to be purged, to be cleansed?
Soul's been cleansed.
You know, and you could just tell this is like a religious thing for him. Like he is so ingrained in it. He's not using it as an excuse to, well, I don't know. I feel like it's one of those things that you could tell some people are just using the purge as an excuse just to be awful there. And while I think the polite leader is definitely doing all this because it's allowed to, it's like this is just sort of like cathartic for him. It's like a spiritual thing he's going through there, where he's like, you know, I am doing what's right in the beliefs, you know.
But it's also like, I feel like, yes, it reaches the point of religion to him, where it's like, yes, you know, and he's talking about all the soul cleansing stuff, but the root of that is killing poor people for him. It's what he's like yelling at the top of his lungs, like he's like outside talking about like, give me the filth, the swine, we have to cleanse them from the earth or whatever, and like, not you and me though, because we're rich, but like these poor people, we gotta kill them. Like that's why he's hunting the filthy homeless in the first place.
That's actually a really good aspect there. So maybe it's just like a matter of respect, like hard feelings.
I mean, I think it's like a little bit. I think he enjoys the purge and killing Ethan too. I don't think he wanted to. He wanted to kill because he's sophisticated like that, right?
Yeah.
But the sort of ironic balance there is his sophistication is killing black and poor people. Like,
yes.
He's like literally like a Nazi. The Nazis were very well dressed, you know, but and very very polite, but they weren't like, and you could say that their fanaticism reached religious heights, but it's not, you know, it's obviously not, you know.
Yeah.
It's still an excuse, quote unquote, for ethnic and classist cleansing, you know?
Yeah, for sure. It was one of those things that it was hard to phrase. It was only in comparison to the other, like, you know, people that are just like, oh, it's just fun. Or people that are just, again, you could tell unhinged, because you see a couple of purgers like just smashing up the walls and photos and everything. I just found it unique that they were able to take the purge. Again, I think they're just having fun coming up with who would celebrate the purge, or what kind of people would they be going through there. But I also love the stupid but wouldn't have it any other way moment where the polite stranger just kisses Ethan Hawke's forehead as he lays him down. It's just so funny. I also like the fact that, I don't know if you got this, but I like the tactic that he didn't kill him. He lets him live, so that way he's able to drag the attention to family as he like stalks him from a distance. Yeah. There, because, you know, basically seeing Ethan Hawke just bleeding everywhere, stuff like that, and then all the, you know, the majority of the family meets up. They're like, "Oh my God, are you okay there?" And then he just approaches and he's just like, "All right, you know, time to start cleansing, time to start purging." And it does lead to like a pretty silly, stupid death with like the daughter all of a sudden whipping around the corner with a gun and just blasting him.
Which is how everybody in this movie dies, man. I mean, God, the son in the beginning was about to die, and then Ethan Hawke whips out around the corner and shoots who was killing him. And then Lena Headey was getting attacked by two people, and then the neighbors shoot and kill him. You know what I mean? Like, there's just so many moments where, like, oh no, it's about to die. They're about to die. It's just got to the point where, yeah, that was literally like the fourth or fifth time where a character was about to die, like, imminent death. And then I was like, all right, well, who's not on screen? Okay, the daughter's gonna whip around and shoot him. Like,
yeah, it just was very predictable there. So I think that's totally fair. And like I said, there is a lot of moments that happens throughout the film, but it's just so uneventful or unimpactful there that it just feels like, you know, we could acknowledge it, but really couldn't say anything else about it. Because I know, especially with the Blaze Stranger, you know, there's a whole thing where the son helps him hide in this like secret area that's established at the beginning of the film through baby cam, you know, there. And then, you know, the Blaze Stranger is using a daughter being held hostage to try to get himself from being killed. It's just stuff that happens, and you know what's going to happen, right? You know, and it just keeps going forward. And even you I know that you probably could predict this, But whenever you look on footage and you see another group of people coming up and killing the Purgers,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you're thinking like, oh, that's like the neighbors, you know, are they coming to help out?
Mm-hmm.
No.
And they become the next antagonist, and that was what I was mentioning earlier. With this movie has an antagonist problem, is they just keep on introducing them and then wasting them, and then introducing them and then wasting them. And there's not like the polite stranger lasts the longest, and the Purgers that are with him. But even then, he gets, one moment where he stabs Ethan Hawke, and then another moment where he stands over them, and then he gets shot. You know what I mean? There's not like a lot of conflict to match with the actual. There's not enough tension to be built up to match with the actual antagonist. So it's like the boyfriend was the antagonist, and then he dies, and then the homeless stranger was the antagonist, and then he's like, save your family or whatever. It's like before the Purgers get in, so he's good. And then the Purgers are all there, and they die pretty quickly, and the neighbors come in, and then the neighbors and the antagonists, and then they get dispatched pretty quickly too. It's just like and it's like they don't let anything build up,
No, I think that's a totally fair point there, that I feel like between all the antagonists, the polite leader was probably the strongest there, but because of that, you're left with like weaker antagonists there. And it sucks because the polite leader is killed like right before kind of like the big, end that they have there. And I get it, it's like subverting expectations there, where it's like, okay, we eliminated, we think the neighbors are going to help, but no, turns out they actually hate them. And while I can believe their motivation as to why they would, they are just like, oh, we actually hate you all, but we knew that we wouldn't be able to kill you, so we didn't bother about it. But once we saw an opportunity pop up,
right?
Yeah, we're taking that opportunity and running with it. And so I believe it, but
it was hinted at the beginning too, when they're bringing cookies, and she's like, "Wow, a new addition. We kind of all paid for that. Ha ha ha.
Yeah,
just neighborhood gossip. Ha ha. They didn't cast me because I look unhinged this entire time or anything. That's not why they cast me for this movie. I'm not going to come try to kill you later."
Oh my gosh.
It would have been more subverting expectations if she was like, all right, stay safe, and just left afterwards.
Yeah, they should have gotten like a much more normal acting thing.
Yeah.
Which I know like why they casted her, because there's definitely a lot of people that are upper class that do act like that, and you imagine they probably just act the same way if they were actually being violent and crazy there. And the first time I watched it, I saw it and I was like, I think this is just a parody of like, rich white people, that they act like this,
rich
that
white woman
she's
parody.
actually not going to be like crazy at the end, and then no, she's crazy at the end, and it's worse the second time round. But it is so brief that by the time you're like, okay, I get it, it's already done.
True.
But yeah, like all the neighbors there, they're just like all faceless, nameless there. And again, I know I'm sure they're probably going with the same entity idea as they did with like the usual Purgers there, where it's just like a representation of the upper class there versus the Purger, which is a mix of like well, let's just be honest, mostly upper class people that are participating in the Purge there. And I just felt like it's pretty weak. I mean, yeah, it's kind of terrifying seeing like, now that Ethan Hawke's dead, that they are taping up the rest of the family there. But again, it's like you haven't seen the bloody stranger in some time, and you're just like, this is where he's gonna appear,
right,
sometime soon. And there he is,
right.
Diffusing the situation. I do like how they have that stupid freaking like Purge chant, there, because again, they're upholding the American ideal of the Purge there. And it's not to say that I couldn't see it happening, but I think it just works better with it worked better with the polite leader, I felt, than just the neighbors there, just all chanting there. So I felt like that kind of sizzled out the tension of the ending. I do also like that the Bloody Stranger also knows to use the baby car just to roll across playing music. And I'm not questioning it. He knows about it, but I don't know. It was just silly. I don't know. It's like one of those like, technically, how would he have time to know it? It's very difficult to navigate or whatever. But he takes him out. I do like that, whenever it comes to them being lined up and, the neighbors are like, oh, come on, just kill us. Kill us. It's all part of the Purge, all part of the Purge. And then, Lena just decides, no, this is, my kids were right about this. This isn't what I want to support anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like how they just have like that huge awkward scene where they're just sitting at the dinner table there,
just waiting for the purge.
Yeah, just waiting for the purge to end, and that they do try to pull some crap
Mm-hmm.
to try to kill there. I mean, I feel like for an ending of the film, it ends exactly the way I would imagine the first film would end. It's just like, okay, we show the start of the purge and right at the end of the purge. And that's just kind of like the whole film there. And it is interesting. I do think it's an interesting choice that with the Bloody Stranger, that they don't try to go for a complete happy end of like, oh, why don't you live with us? You're homeless. You don't really have a home there. Then instead, it's just like, the Bloody Stranger puts the gun down, starts walking out, and all Lena says is, you gonna be okay? And he's like, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and so then they just like walk out, and they're just kind of looking at each other, just kind of taking it all in of what they just went through the entirety of the purge there. And so I feel like overall it's not like a horribly like weak ending for what could have been.
What could have been a better ending though, and I know there are 5 movies, so maybe they ended this way one time, is instead of having every conflict end by just somebody else come around the corner and shooting somebody, what if they were battling out, they've been scrapping for their lives all night, and finally, whether it's the neighbors or the bloody or the polite stranger or whoever, finally catches whoever's left and has a gun at him. I think it would work best with the polite stranger, honestly. Has a gun at him and is like savoring in the purge or whatever, and then you hear the little siren go off, and he like looks over at the clock, and it's like 7 or whatever, and the purge is over, and he's just like, oops, see you next year or whatever, and then like the little music from the car is playing or something, and he like walks backwards out of a window and is like, and at all else, at least he abides by the rules of the purge. You know what I mean?
I'm like doing the soy boy right now. It's ridiculous there, where I'm just that idea. Ah, man,
because you just lose track of the fact that it's a limited time thing.
You know what? I'm just gonna take Scream 2 and swap it out and move Purge down to 4.5. Yeah, that would have been a so much better ending. I would have actually preferred that there. Like, especially if he was a firm believer in Purge, like maybe he has a bulletproof vest, because he just got shot in the chest there, and he does do that, and then, man, that would be so good.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, they already set up like spooky atmosphere where they cut the power, and so it's dark light, and so I wish there was more of like, these guys are professional hunters or whatever. I wish the family was being hunted all night or whatever, and then he finally gets somewhere he wants them, and then time's up.
That would have been such a much better ending, dude. Oh, man. dude, that would have been so good, and plus, again, would have just kept a better main antagonist. Oh my gosh.
And then you could see, and then that sets up for the sequel, because they're gonna make a sequel. Although I will hope in the future movies that at least at some point they do it from the point of view of poor people, because I feel like it's got to be 20 times scarier than being a rich person in your house, and then oops, my security fails. Which it's not a bad concept. I feel like they just didn't execute it amazingly. But I mean, I feel like being homeless, and it's like, shit, it's that time of year again. You know what I mean? That's gotta be scary.
Well, without spoiling too much, I do think you do get your wish in the sequel there. At least, from what I would assume you're wanting there, it does fulfill that
just the
a little bit
perspective
more.
of someone that's not has a security system they could be behind.
Yeah, so I think those are definitely good points. Before wrapping up this episode, anything else you want to talk about with the Purge?
Sheesh. I don't think so. I think I've hit all my thoughts.
Okay, well, no worries. I think I've definitely hit my thoughts as well. And plus, I am now ultimately bummed out that I was like, man, that would have been a better ending. Dang.
We could just have a different podcast at this point where we watch movies, and then I'm like, this is what the ending should have been.
Yes.
We just rewrite movies.
All right. Okie doke. All right. So, get ready for teasers for the next film.
Okay.
All right, so we are back visiting this director, Robert Eggers, who directed The Lighthouse, with another one of his films, which is about a certain period of time, think like Crucible, everything like that. And the interesting with the title there is that it is spelled with 2 V's instead of a W.
Oh, something about witches with 2 D's? V's?
Yes,
yes. The witch?
Yes, it is the witch.
The witch.
Yes, yeah. Technically, it's like, even if you look here, it's like the witch, but then you look at there and it says Vitch.
That Vitch.
So this is something that's been a long time coming that I've been meaning to watch. I've never seen it before, so definitely be sure to stay tuned to see our thoughts on that. But until then, thank you all again so much for listening to this episode, and we'll see y'all again next time when we're popping the scary with The Witch.
That Vitch. Double Vitch.
Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube, Castbox, or iTunes platforms to stay up to date when new episodes drop. To see what Aaron and I are up to, check out our respective Twitter accounts. For me, it is @ColeKirkVA, and for Aaron, it is @AnimalGameDev. Thank you all so much for listening to our podcast. We'll speak to you all again next time when we're popping the scary.